Good morning guys, welcome to Mark Shrimp Tanks. In today's show we are going to discuss how often I feed my shrimp, because I get asked this question daily, right? And it's coming right up. Alright guys, so the question was, as I said, how often do you feed your shrimp? And guys, that question is very tank selective, meaning that I feed all my shrimp differently in every single tank because they're not all the same. Some tanks I can feed a lot, some I can't. Some species of shrimp I can feed more, some I can't. For example, if the shrimp are in hard water, I can feed them more than soft water, right? And we're going to discuss those things in detail today as well, because there is a slight difference. For a start, with Neocaridina, for example, I can feed the tanks almost as much as I want every single day, multiple times a day, and the shrimp just love it, right? But then the issues we have with bee shrimp, for example, is if you overfeed the tank and the shrimp don't eat it, then you can have different issues with water quality or whatever else. It is very, very noticeable that if you keep on feeding the powdered shrimp food that we use quite regularly in our Neocaridina tanks, if you try and do the same with your bee shrimp tanks, you'll run into issues, right? And I've been trying to figure that out, why this happens. And guys, I have a little theory that the reason that we can't feed the powdered food so much is basically because the shrimp are on an active soil, right? That soil in itself is a food source, right? When you look at the substrate, it will often be like full of life, little bits of algae, whatever else, right? It's an actual living substrate, right? So I'm not quite sure it's necessarily necessary to feed all of our shrimp powdered foods all the time when you have an active soil. I just don't think it's needed. And this is going from personal experience, where I've tried to feed powdered foods more often or the same as the Neo tanks, and yeah, you just run into problems, right? So the problems specifically will be that your shrimp will start to become lethargic. We all know these signs, don't we? They start to become lethargic, they start to hide, and eventually they just keel over and die, right? That's not what you want. So you have to cut back on the feeding. So I do have a plan for this. I do have a plan. What I basically do is I feed all my Neocaridina tanks almost as much as I want. You can feed them almost every single day. And then with the bee shrimp tanks, all I do is I feed powdered food maybe once a week, and then I give them a solid food when I think they need it, right? It's very important that you use your eyes and you just watch the tank and you see if the shrimp are actually wanting to feed in the first place, because you can compound a lot of issues if you keep on adding food to the tank when the shrimp won't eat it. Makes sense, doesn't it? Stop polluting the tank by putting too much food in. We're going to show you some examples today as well, some of my tanks, because I think, guys, it's often easier for me just to show you than me to try and explain, because you guys all know I'm not the best at speaking. Right, so let's do some tanks. We'll do a couple of variations of tanks as well, so you get the gist for the Neos and the bee shrimp and whatever else, and yeah, let's get it done. Right, as you can see here, I have a selection of harder chips here, and I have my powdered food. You guys all know I like to feed a lot of powdered food, and I have certain types of food that I like to feed just occasionally as well. But in the mainstay, guys, right, this is what I normally feed. And guys, just don't go by these brands because they're insignificant. What is important here is that I'm feeding a hard food and a powdered food, right? So none of these brands really matter. Don't go in and buy any of this stuff. What's important is powdered food, hard food, right? So all you need is a decent brand of food. You don't get stuck on one brand of food. So this is EBOOKS here, and yeah, what we normally do, guys, in the shrimp room is I'll go over each tank and I'll feed each tank. And guys, I'm actually going to feed some tanks that I know where they won't eat the food, just to show you as well, right? Because I want you guys to see the difference in what shrimp look like when they're hungry and when they're not hungry, because it is really easy to tell. So what we're going to start with, guys, is the softwater bee shrimp tanks, and we're going to use the hard food first. So I'm just going to randomly pick up some of this EBOOKS here, and we're going to start to put into some of the tanks, right? And I want you guys to tell me in the comment section below, as we go to each tank, what you think the shrimp's reaction will be, right? So let's look at the Calcio tank here, for example. Calcios, for me anyway, they love to hide a little bit. I don't know if they're slightly light sensitive, but yeah, there's babies and stuff in here, so the tank is healthy, the plants are looking gorgeous. Let's put a piece of food in and we'll see what the reaction is. Because you should be able to tell reasonably fast what is going to happen in a tank, right? So you see there's one shrimp running to it already, it's on it. There's one at the back that is running to the food that will be on it. So we, just looking at these two shrimp already, we can tell that these shrimp would be hungry, they would need more food. Let's put some in this little geranium here. You can see here, you see the shrimp are quite active. Let's put a piece of food in. Like so. And look at the shrimp. Watch the shrimp's behaviour. Shrimp on it already. 2 shrimp on it already. Right, so we know that these shrimp will eat that food. So this is what you've got to try and work out when you're feeding them. Like if I put that food in now and then the shrimp didn't come to the food, I wouldn't feed them for a few days. And this is just something that you have to learn for each tank, right? So let's go over to the Neo tanks, because these guys are always ravenous. Let's put some food in. These guys are always ravenous. I know for a fact that I can feed these tanks every single day. Food is floating away. There it is. Same with these guys in the bottom. These are soft water, but these guys are always ravenous, the same. Always ravenous. And yeah, we're going to go over a few tanks here because I want you guys to just be able to see what I see and then learn this for yourselves as well. So you can see that the shrimp are very active in this tank, right? So I know these shrimp will be ravenous for food. God, I'm so bad at tracking the food. Right, and then we come down to these 3 tanks. Now yesterday I did feed these tanks, but nothing came to the front here, right? So I know for sure I'm overfeeding this tank. It's quite evident as well with the amount of macrofauna on this side, yeah, that maybe yes, I am overfeeding the tank just a little bit. This tank is really full of macrofauna. I noticed the moss is growing much faster than the other tanks, right? So it's very nutrient rich. Remember we were talking about the no need to feed so much powdered foods in their bee shrimp tanks because the actual soil is a food source. Well, if you have nutrient rich soil, you don't need to feed your powdered food so much. Look at these 3 little babies here in this tank. This is the this was the Galaxy Fishbone cross with some of the babies at the back here. Let's put some food in. These guys are ravenous. Sometimes we'll see how they feel today. Let's put a piece in our crystal tank. You see what I mean here, how they're already going for it. Let's see, put some in here. My crayfish tank, guys, the shrimp are always ravenous, always. So there's, I give them a different food, but I can see that these guys are always ravenous as well, so they can get a big piece of food. This tank here, yesterday I put a piece of food in and they did not come for it, right? But that means I wouldn't normally feed it, but I want you guys to see this for yourself. I should not feed this tank, but I'm going to just to show you guys. Let's have a little look, put the food in. We'll leave this tank, and then guys, I want you to see a tank like this as well, where the shrimp are not mega active. Look, you can see them. See the little babies in the gravel? They are not mega active. Another baby in the gravel. Someone said that to me the other day about this tank, how there's not so many babies in it. It's just one of those things. You get like a lot of babies all at once and then not so many babies. But there's babies in this, you can see them here. See how they're all just sitting there? They're not mega still, but they're not mega active either. So this tank would be like 50-50. A 50-50 tank. See them munching away on the leaves here? 50-50. One of them's molted. So I want you guys to see this as well. Another little baby there. I want you to see it, what I see, so that you can learn as well. Let's grab our food. Let's put a piece in. Away up here, you'll see it plop in a second. And we'll come back to that in a minute. This tank is being emptied, so there's nothing in here. I've actually switched the light on this because I'm going to redo this tank really soon. Let's put a piece of food in so you guys can see. Blue Dreams, you probably won't see anything in this because yeah, there's only like 6 or 7 shrimp in there, but they have babies and stuff, so yeah, let's have a little look at them. While we wait, guys, right, we're going to go to the powdered food as well, because I'm quite confident in feeding the powdered foods in tanks. I know that the shrimp will eat it. I'm noticing some babies in here today as well. Baby, let's see, is there any more? Wee bambinos. Oh, there are micro babies here. I don't know if you're able to see here somewhere there's a micro baby. Actually, I think I might, if I can, I'll put an image up so you can see the really micro baby. Is there another micro baby? Must have been born recently. Where are you, micro babas? So it's always nice to see micro babies in a tank because it shows you're doing something right. Let's go over to the powdered food, right? Because we're going to come back to the solid food in a second. Let me just cover these up. This is our powdered goldfish flakes. You guys know I love to feed this to my Neocaridina tanks and my tiger tanks, which reminds me, I actually didn't feed the tiger tanks, did I? Let's put the food in. These guys will eat this, and so will the other tiger tank that was redone yesterday. You know, I think I forgot to feed this whole bottom rack here, but you'll see what I mean. You will see what I mean, because we're going to go back over these tanks as well, right? So this is the powdered food. As I said, I like to keep this for my Neocaridina tanks. Guys, I hope this is going to answer the question how much I feed, because it's honestly, I get asked it several times a day. Right, so there's a bazillion babies in this Blue Dream tank, right? And this is what they're eating, this stuff. So let's get the food on the floor because I can't hold the camera and do this at the same time. Big pinch, guys, big pinch of food. Up like this into the tank, and you can see, watch, it is a lot of food. See how much it is? And the reason this works is because we can change out a lot of water in these Neocaridina tanks. It's like 30% a week I change it in this, and I just get bazillions of babies. Look how much there is. All over the gravel, everywhere. So yeah, this is just something that you'll have to learn with your personal experience. How much can you feed your tanks? Neocaridina tanks, as long as you have a good breeding colony and they're healthy and there's tons of babies, you can feed the tank more. But as I said again, yeah, you really need to learn just to watch the shrimp and see exactly how much it is that they need to eat. So let's add a little bit more of this powdered food to one of my other tanks where I know they will eat it a lot as well, and that is the Opae Ula tank. I only really feed this tank like once or twice a week, but yeah, you can't see because of this blind thing here. I don't know why it felt. I didn't think any food went in the water, but you can see here, right? And if I come back to this in a minute, this whole tank will be berserk. You see all the babies in the back? You see what I mean? You have to learn just to like judge what it is your shrimp actually do, right? And what's also important, guys, in the shrimp room is that you put the lids back on, because if you don't put a lid back on this, you will ruin the entire batch of food. Always date your food as well. As I said, this is crushed flakes. I use a little coffee grinder. Let me show you that as well, because not a lot of you will have seen this. Coffee grinder. The handheld ones are much better than the big ones that they use for big batches of grinding coffee beans, because this does it much finer. As you can see here, there's my cocaine in there. I'm kidding before anybody. What was this actually? Maybe vitamin C, maybe ascorbic acid, I think it probably was. And sometimes I mix things like this in with my powdered food just a little bit, guys, because I think it benefits the shrimp a lot. So we are going to now go over all of these tanks again, and I'll give them 5 minutes and we'll come back. And guys, let me see, just tell me in the comment section below, were you correct? Did that tank need fed or did it not? I want to see what you thought. Right, guys, let's have a little look. Were we correct in feeding some of these tanks? Let's start over here our Opae tank. And let's see, what do you think? Were we correct to feed this tank? Quite clearly, yes, we fed this properly today. Blue Dreams, I would say yes, we fed this tank properly today. The shrimp are all over the place in here, so it's quite evident that I'm feeding them the right amount. And guys, this tank was fed yesterday up here. This tank was also fed yesterday. This tank is a good example of a tank that is not quite ready enough to be fed every other day. The shrimp there, I can see babies around the food. There's probably about 8 or 9 adults, but there's lots of adults that are not interested. You see them in the plants and stuff here. I can see them on the back and stuff. They're not interested in this food, right? So this was a day too early. Every second day or third day for this tank. These guys can be fed every single day. As you can see here, they're very, very active. These guys can be fed every single day. They are very, very active. Let's have a look at the other tanks. This is probably about, I don't know, a quarter of the shrimp in this tank. So yeah, I shouldn't have fed this today. This tank was also fed yesterday. So that's to give you an idea how much I'm overfeeding this tank, right? So in an ideal world, guys, I should go back here and remove that food. Same with this little geranium here. The shrimp are all on the food, but they're all quite still already. I've way overfed this tank. That one piece of pellet is far too big for them. Does this make sense? Let's look at the orange eye blue tigers here. They are eating the food. They are quite ravenous, but the piece of food is just simply too big. I probably could have fed about half the size of food for this tank. That tank was also fed yesterday. Here's a great example of, yes, this was the correct amount of feeding, because our shrimp are still ravenous in this tank, and I also did feed this tank yesterday. Look how ravenous they are. So we are feeding this tank the correct amount. This gets no powdered food at all. As I said before, I think I have kind of theory that the soil itself is nutrient rich enough to provide nutrients to baby shrimp, so you don't need to feed powdered foods so much in a soft water bee shrimp tank. Let's have a look at these guys down here. This tank was fed yesterday. There's actually a dead shrimp there, you see it? Dead shrimp. This tank was fed yesterday, and yeah, there's like 1/10 of the shrimp in this tank at the front, so we should not be feeding them today. I should fish that dead shrimp out as well. This tank was fed yesterday, but it was a really, really small amount, right? So this one is in between. These are all shrimp that have been born in this tank. These ones, because 3 small ones, blue bolts. I've never put blue bolts in this tank, so they can only be young. This tank I didn't put anything in because nothing at all came to the food yesterday. I can see shrimp in the back, but there must, as I said, there must be enough macronutrients in here, or macro stuff for them to eat. I can see the sides are like literally just covered in stuff. Hopefully that focuses. You can see the sides, it's just covered in stuff. Tons and tons of snails. Algae is growing like the clappers. These guys are on the food here, and yeah, this is probably the right amount. They also got fed yesterday. What's nice to see about these guys is they actually are growing now, which is good. They were kind of like stunted for a little while. Let's look at these other tanks over here. Here is a great example of overfeeding. A horrible glare. Only 2 shrimp on the food, right? And I put another piece of food in here yesterday, and there was only like 1 or 2 shrimp on the food, right? So this tank is being overfed. You guys will be able to recognize these issues. I don't think I fed that one. I don't think so. I can't remember if I fed the bottom ones. Let's look at the top. These guys are quite ravenous. So we're feeding this tank the proper amount. As I said as well, we're not going to feed these. Yeah, I'm actually seeing quite a lot of babies. Where are they? Where's my finger? Over here on the back glass. I'm seeing quite a lot of babies today, so yeah. Go with no feeding powdered foods in your saltwater tanks, and you probably will get a better survival rate in the tank with it not being polluted so much. Just try to see if there's any more babies, because it's quite always nice to see the little teeter top ones in here because it shows that your water quality is quite good. There's another tiny little baby there. Water quality is improving. Let me see, so this is a great example here. If you do excuse the glare, these shrimp are quite static, look at them. They're quite static. Let's have a little look at this, where the food was. They're quite static. This tank was fed yesterday, but guys, also as well, look at the amount, if you can get past the glare, look at the amount of life in this tank. There is an abundance of food in here, right, so we don't need to feed this tank as much. You see what I mean? Use your eyeballs. Do I need to feed the shrimp today? No. You can see how slowly they are, right? So I'll have to fish that food out. This one over here has to be fished out. What else did I feed? Did I put food in this tank? I did. Away at the bottom. Let me just check again. So we have maybe a couple of bits of food to fish out. This one. I'm going to fish this one out as well. But guys, I only overfed them today just to show you, to give you that definitive answer on how much you should feed your shrimp is tank specific, and it's also species specific, because you can feed some species more than others depending on the substrate, etc, etc. Right, so if you have a sand substrate and it's not nutrient as dense as the active soil, for example, you can get away with feeding more. If you have a really nutrient dense active soil that's full of fertilizer, it will produce lots and lots of algae and macrofauna. You'll see it as well with the tanks when it seems like they're just a little bit more alive than your Neocaridina tanks. You can feed these tanks a little bit more, or with powder you have to not feed them as much. Let's have a little look over here again, just one last time. Were we correct? Did you call it right, guys? Let me know in the comment section below what you thought. So there you have it, guys. If you've enjoyed today's show, please do me a big favour and show me some love. Give me a big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, if you want to see more shrimp content like this, and I'll see you all in the next one. Happy shrimp keeping.